Yes, I shall.
As backup.
Belt and suspenders.
Yep. Belt and suspenders. Okay, everybody, let's bow in. And welcome to the Path of Awakening Buddhist Center course. We are calling the Foundation course. We're working our way through Volume 1 of The Profound Treasury of the Ocean of Dharma. These three volumes, Volume 1, 2, and 3, are digests of talks given over a period of about 15 years by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. Every year he'd take a group of students, anywhere from 150 to 250, away for 3 months. This was sort of similar to what he experienced himself in Tibet, going off on retreat with his teachers there. And during those 3 months, students would practice and study. Courses would be taught every night by Trungpa Rinpoche during the study periods, and then as well as during the day by some of his older students. And then during the sitting periods, they would just sit. And these talks were always organized into, the first month was on the so-called Hinayana, or lesser vehicle. Yana means vehicle. And the second month was on the Mahayana, or the greater vehicle. And the third month was on the Vajrayana, or the tantric advanced vehicle. These talks, given over 15 plus years, were digested by Judy Leaf into these 3 volumes. And we are working our way through the first. We're on chapters 33 tonight and 34. So I'm going to begin, and then Philip is going to do chapter 34. Chapter 33 is on the 8 antidotes to the 6 obstacles of shamatha. Thank you. We covered the 6 obstacles last week, and now we're going to talk about their antidotes. The obstacles, let's see, are laziness, forgetfulness, drowsiness, wildness, a lack of coordination, and did I get 6?
One more.
I think so. Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5.
Well, we'll find the 6th as we go along. So, Trungpa Rinpoche starts out by talking about how these are the obstacles to the practice of shamatha. Now, shamatha, in Buddhism, there are 2 main forms of meditation, shamatha and vipassana. Shamatha is often translated as mindfulness practice, and Buddhists call it the common practice, meaning that it's held in common with the Hindu tradition, whereas vipassana is not. Vipassana is awareness practice, and that's unique to Buddhism. And meditation practice in the Buddhist tradition starts with shamatha. It's foundational. Shamatha means focusing one's mind one-pointedly on an object. That object can be anything. Now, in the Buddhist tradition, the most commonly used object is the breath. But in the Hindu tradition, well, for instance, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, is that he, who taught transcendental meditation, used mantra, sound, and you can focus your mind one-pointedly on that sound. But it can be anything. It could be a candle flame, it could be a statue sitting in front of you. But the idea is that you focus your mind one-pointedly, and by doing this, you bring yourself back from dreams. Now, this practice has 3 main benefits. Shamatha. Resting in peace is what it literally means in Sanskrit. The Tibetan is shine, which means abiding in peace. And because what happens is that when you focus your mind one-pointedly, you come back from thoughts. So one of the first benefits of the 3 main benefits is that you get a rest. because thoughts are full of anxiety, anxiousness, tension, a wish that things were otherwise. That's what drives thoughts. They are the very stuff of ego, of the false belief in an I, and they're all about keeping I busy in one way or another, whether it's with pain or pleasure. The main point is to keep I alive, give it a job. I is like the actor, the main protagonist in the drama of your thought, your dream. The second benefit, well, so the first benefit is getting a rest. One teacher I know calls it like having a really good nap. You come back into awareness here in the present, and you get a rest from anxious thought. You can practice this especially at night when you're having difficulty going to sleep, often because your mind is racing on disturbing thoughts. And you can practice shamatha, becoming aware of the breath, and you will achieve peace and fall asleep. The second benefit is that you begin to develop a particular muscle, which is very important, a muscle of realizing when you are dreaming and coming back. And the third benefit, which is actually what I should have mentioned first, is that you begin to realize the extent to which you spend your life thinking, dreaming, lost in dreams. Most people don't even know because they haven't practiced coming back from dreams. They just walk around, as we do, oftentimes, thinking and without even knowing that they're thinking. They're not aware of it. So when you practice shamatha, which is the act of coming back from dreams into this awareness of whatever it is, one-pointedly, you become aware of how much time in your life you spend your life thinking, lost in dreams. And so these are the three main benefits. Having become aware of it, you begin to develop this muscle, this very important muscle of being able to recognize when you're dreaming and then come back into this. And in fact, that is the main aspect of meditation altogether, is to realize you're dreaming and come back. And this is the common practice. It's, as I say, it's if you've practiced in a yoga studio, you've been taught mindfulness practice, shamatha, transcendental meditation, shamatha, Hindu, and it's called the common practice because it's held in common by both religions. Vipassana is the more advanced practice in Buddhism, and it contains shamatha. You have to have shamatha practice before you can do vipassana. Vipassana means that having come back, instead of being focused on one thing narrowly, you are aware of the whole environment, the space that you inhabit, this room, this could be if you're outdoors, the whole outdoors. You're aware of anything and everything that might present itself within this space. All of the phenomenal world that arises, sights, sounds, smells, tastes, tactile sensations, and mental events, all of these things, the six knowables arising in this space, and one is aware of all of them. So for instance, you wouldn't practice shamatha, one-pointed focus on an object, while you're driving your car. It wouldn't work. You could have an accident if you were focused on your breath or something, because you wouldn't be aware of the environment. Vipassana will make you a better driver. You're aware of the whole environment, and you will be a more intelligent and aware driver. So we are practicing in our meditation here, when those of you who come to the group, a hybrid of the two. We are practicing Vipassana, as awareness of space, and sometimes we work with the breath going out into it and dissolving, and at the end it dissolves and we're just right here in the space. So it's shamatha and Vipassana mixed. Now, there are obstacles to this, and today we're talking about the antidotes to these obstacles. These are based on, first of all, coordinating body and mind, he says. Coordinating body and mind means really that it's Vipassana. You come back into awareness of this physical and mental world. So you're coordinating body and mind. Your awareness is right here with your body and with the world around you, which is sort of your extended body, the table that you're sitting in next to, the chair that you're on, the smells coming from your kitchen, whatever it may be. And you're aware of these things, and this is the combination of mind and body, bringing them together, coordinating them. And this is essential to the practice of meditation and to the overcoming of the obstacles, this coordination of mind and body. The second prerequisite, or is what is essential to overcoming confusion and overcoming these obstacles, is having a cheerful attitude. How about that? We need a cheerful attitude because when we're cheerful, we come awake, we come aware right here in the present moment. When we're not cheerful, when we're lost in depressing thoughts, we're just that, lost in depressing thoughts, and we're not present. We are complaining to ourselves about ourselves and our world. So it's very important to have a cheerful attitude which allows us to come back and appreciate this world. It also means appreciating the Dharma, because this is the whole thrust of the Dharma, is to come back and be appreciative of this world. And this is enabled by having a cheerful attitude. Trungpa Rinpoche, I remember him so many times sitting, lecturing to us, and in the middle of it, just turning around to us and saying, please cheer up, please cheer up. Asking us over and over. So when you cheer up, you feel fundamentally worthy. You feel fundamentally fortunate. You feel wholesome and good, unconditionally, for no particular reason, just the way it is. As you come back from depression into this cheerful appreciation of your life. He says your existence is solid, steady, and balanced. You feel unconditionally positive for no reason at all. That's what the unconditional means. Your entire existence, your whole being is connected with the Dharma. And the 6 obstacles to shamatha are the opposite of that unconditional cheerfulness. So the first is laziness. And laziness means you don't want to do it. You don't want to meditate. You just rather go vegetate. The antidotes are 4. There are 4 antidotes to laziness. The first is faith. Faith that the Dharma actually works, that meditation actually works. You have a conviction that it works, and so you want to do it because it's going to improve your life. It's the right thing to do. The second is respect. Respect means that having come back to this world, you see that it is fresh, vivid, new, beautiful, constantly arising in a way that is so vivid and meaningful. And so what he calls this is that everything is sacred. Sacred means just that freshness, meaningfulness, vividness. He says the definition of sacredness, your actions are not based on trying to embellish your ego, to build yourself up. You're willing to let go of it. You develop meekness. Meekness means there's no me. You're not pushing your me forward. You've given up mine, my territory, my world, my privacy. So you experience sacredness and you're surrounded by gentleness. The third antidote to laziness is effort. You can't just bliss out on faith and sacredness. You have to exert yourself. And it means exposing yourself to discomfort, like the discomfort of sitting on your cushion or in your chair and meditating, giving up the entertainments of that television show you wanted to watch, that dinner you were going to have just now. And you're giving up those entertainments, and it mocks your ego, that giving up. Your ego says, no, I want to be entertained, because ego always wants to be entertained. Even pain is a fundamental entertainment of ego, because ego can complain about it. Ego is the sense of I, the importance of I. It says, so you make an effort based on joy and upliftedness, and things begin to happen. The fourth antidote to laziness, the fourth of the 4, is called in Tibetan Shinjang. This is a very important term in meditation. Shin means thoroughly and Jang means processed. So Xinjiang means thoroughly processed. Here it is the absence of ego. Every time you come back to awareness, now, right here, in this screen, and wherever you may be, you are giving up ego. Ego is a constant desire for entertainment for I. It gives I a project. Could be all kinds of projects. Could be painful ones, could be semi-pleasurable ones, could be pleasurable ones. You're giving that up and you're coming back to this simple awareness. This is Xinjiang. And it produces a feeling of freedom, freedom from the need to be entertained. And this, this kind of freedom and virtue frees you from depression, a depressed state of mind. And in fact, whenever you do feel depressed, you can practice meditation coming back. And to the extent that you come out of those depressed thoughts into awareness of whatever it might be, the breath, this space that we inhabit, you will come back from depression. He just says depression is connected with the lower realms. We've talked about the realms a little bit. The realms are the 6 emotional states. The hell realm, which is the realm of anger. This is the lowest of the lower realms. Above that is the realm of the hungry ghosts, which is the realm of poverty and jealousy, that you feel poor and you're jealous of people who have what you don't have. And above that, slightly better, is the animal realm, which is the realm of ignorance and stupidity, just plodding along, one foot in front of the other, your nose to the ground, as it were. And the depression is very much associated with the lower realms. It's also part of the upper realms too, but it's much, much attenuated in the upper realms. So, and he said it's like the Zen ox herding pictures, and I'm going to show them to you. Just give me a break here for a minute while I get them up. What happened was, I'll tell you about these pictures. It's going to take me a second to get them. These are a famous Japanese Zen teaching, and Trungpa Rinpoche liked them very much. And in about 1971 or 2, I forget when, we put together a magazine called Garuda, which turned out to be very important. And in it, it was very crude because we weren't very sophisticated at doing this kind of thing. But in it, we had the Zen ox herding pictures, and with a commentary, slightly different commentary than the Japanese by Trungpa Rinpoche. And here they are. I'm going to show them to you, I hope. There we go. Now, can you see this? Somebody tell me yay or nay.
Yes.
Good. Okay. And how many are there? I think there are 10. This is the first one, the search for the bull. The inspiration for this first step, this is Trungpa Rinpoche speaking, which is searching for the bull, this feeling that things are not wholesome, something is lacking. That feeling of loss produces pain. You're looking for whatever. It is that will make the situation right. You discover that ego's attempt to create an ideal environment is unsatisfactory. And here you discover the footprints. By understanding the origin, you find the possibility of transcending this pain. This is the perception of the 4 Noble Truths. This is the very beginning of Buddhism. The truth of suffering, the truth that there is an origin to suffering, the third truth that there is a truth to the cessation of suffering, and the fourth, that there is a path to the cessation of suffering. You see that the pain results from the conflicts created by ego, I, and discover the footprints of the bull, which are the heavy marks of ego in all play of events. You are inspired by unmistakable and logical conclusions rather than by blind faith. This corresponds to the Shravakayana and the Pratyekayana paths. These are the first 2 of the 9 paths of Buddhism. perceiving the bull. And I'm not going to go through all these, but it ends, you tame the bull. Once caught, the taming of the bull is achieved by the precision of meditative panoramic awareness, that's vipassana, and the sharp whip of transcendental knowledge, prajna. The bodhisattva has accomplished the transcendent acts, the paramitas of the Mahayana path, and is not dwelling on anything. And then finally, not quite finally, but you ride the bull home, and then finally the bull is transcended, and both bull and self are transcended, and you reach the source. And that's the end in the world, and you re-enter the world. I'm going to put these in chat, and I hope, and you can download it and have it for yourself, because the first route is very hard to find anymore. Let's see if I can do this. I want to give them to you. Yeah, go to chat. Okay.
Those watching the recording won't be able to see the chat, but we could put it in the comments.
I'm putting it into chat. Hold on a second. I hope. Yeah. We'll be there in a minute. Okay. I've got it in chat, and you can download it to your computer, I think. Try it, Barry.
I did not get it in chat. Anyone else?
No.
No?
No.
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 Well, I'll do this.
Did you send it to everyone?
Hold on a second. I mean, I can see it here, but one more try. Can you see it, anybody?
No. If you can email or text it to me, I'll go ahead and put
Okay,
it in chat.
I'll email it to you.
Okay.
And hold on a second. Opening up mail. Okay. So Barry, I just emailed it to you.
I heard it.
Okay. So This frees you from the lower realms. You learn how to tame your mind through Shinjan, where you bring your mind and body together. There's no separation. You're not thinking I, me. It's just right here. And you are also cheering up. It frees you from the depressed state of mind of the lower realms. He says, bigger final Shinjan is the fruit of shamatha. Your mind is soothed and your body is completely relaxed. Sometimes at night, if I can't sleep, I practice shamatha. And I'll lie there and I'll think, this isn't working. And the next thing I know, I'm waking up. It really works. So the antidote to forgetfulness, which is the second obstacle, is developing a folksy attitude. And basically what that simply means is you know what to do very easily, naturally. When you forget to work with the technique or the posture, your mind is brought back. And you naturally and automatically maintain mindfulness. Whether you're on the cushion or talking to someone in life off the cushion, whatever you're doing, mindfulness becomes a natural process. You come back from dreams. It's almost a habitual pattern, he says. You could do it hundreds of times a day, coming back. And that's really, when you begin to do that, that is the practice of this path. Everything hangs together, he says, based on wakefulness. You come back to this, and this is totally coordinated, hanging together. And you don't put the Dharma, the teachings, on a pedestal. They are you, this, now. The antidote to both drowsiness and wildness, these are the third and fourth obstacles, is a light-handed warning system, he calls it. You recognize that you're drowsy or wild, your mind is going wild, and those things become reminders to come back to awareness instead of being obstacles to it. This is based on wakefulness and cheerfulness. So they automatically, when you're sitting in meditation, your posture helps you do this. And in post-meditation, your alarm system wakes you up. It tells you, oops, I've been lost in dreams again. I've been lost in dreams of aggression or depression or envy or whatever it may be. The antidote to carelessness is bringing yourself back to mindfulness again. It's connected with wildness and drowsiness, and you're drawing your attention back to the present, as in walking meditation. When you do walking meditation, which we do in the mornings, at 10 minutes, you just simply relax into wherever you may be and with your body moving through the space. You access your sense of cheerfulness and appreciation of your tremendous freedom, the freedom of intense, simple, effortless awareness right now. You can do it right now as you look at this screen. You're effortlessly aware of it. So Barry is sharing a file. It says, finally, the antidote to lack of coordination is equilibrium. From proper discipline it comes. It's like the strings on an instrument, not too tight and not too loose. When we practice going out with the breath, one of the instructions is 75% of your awareness is here in the environment. 25% is on the breath. This is figuratively speaking. It just means that the breath is going out like a line, and your awareness is not focused completely on the breath at all. It's right here in this space, and the awareness is going out like a line drawn on water, or like a line drawn on a piece of paper. It goes out and it's 25% on the breath, 75% in your awareness of the environment. It says the point is to have a basic ground of awareness. Open, sharp, soothing, space, fullness. And then he says, there's always room for humor. Humor is like part of that line that goes out into the space. Equilibrium the equilibrium of just being aware here in the space. Shamatha practice, which is the first step in the whole tradition, is based on treating yourself gently and at the same time being aware of what you're doing so that you don't just lapse into dream. He says it's like training a horse, which he was kind of into. His wife was an equestrienne. Working with the technique of suddenly bringing yourself back, combined with the practice of awareness. You bring yourself back and you're aware of this, the whole space. Equilibrium, there is both effort and relaxation. The effort is to come back, and the relaxation is this awareness of the space of this room. And then he says, the traditional idea of effort is a sudden flash of mindfulness coming back from dreams. As many as 300 a day, who knows, might be 1,000 a day. Being there on the spot with relaxation and humor. You're not beating yourself up at all. If you do that, you're off in dream again. So with equilibrium, you begin to appreciate life. He says, coffee and donut. You don't need to cheat or buy anything from anybody. Life is beginning to become wholesome and good. That's the beauty of this. It really produces a wholesome and good feeling about one's life. Because unwholesomeness and the feeling that one's life is bad lies completely in thought. When you come back to this awareness, it's automatically wholesome and good. So working with the antidotes, these 8 antidotes, to the 6 obstacles of shamatha. He says you become a dharmic person. You begin to realize that your whole being can be steeped in dharma. And that doesn't mean you're thinking about dharma all the time. It just means that you're remembering to come back to this open awareness with this punctuation of awareness, like right now, the picture on the screen, the feeling of your bottom on the cushion now that I mentioned it, or the seat or the chair. He says you have to begin at the beginning. There's no other way. The Hinayana, this is the first stage of the path, is not grim and severe. It's quite delightful. Once you realize that, working with these antidotes can cheer you up. Depression is a fundamental problem. I've got this highlighted for myself. Cheering up is so important. So all the antidotes, as well as your posture, are connected with the cheering up process. When you cheer up, you let go of thoughts and depression, and you come into an appreciation of this life as it arises now. So you don't give in to pessimism about your ability to wake up. You should not give up working with your discipline of mindfulness and awareness. The obstacles, the neuroses that arise are not regarded as signs of impossibility or being screwed up on your part, but as signs of possibility. You should always bring yourself back to awareness and to mindfulness with the attitude that you are workable. However crazy you may be, he says, you are still workable. You can always cut through it and come back to this simple awareness right here and now where we're living. It says, the Dharma is not a stranger that you're going to invite into your world. It is always there, this awake awareness. You can just dip into it. It's much less effort than taking a shower. It's a piece of cake, he says. So treat yourself gently, kindly. The middle way, which you do not condemn yourself or build yourself up, either one. They're both flip sides of the same coin. If you condemn yourself, it's just the flip side of praising yourself. You just come back to this, what's real. You have a decent relationship with yourself and a decent relationship with the world, and in turn, you will also have a decent experience of the Dharma. So, I'll turn it over to Philip.
Thank you, John. So I wanted to talk about chapter 34. cutting thoughts and short-circuiting the kleshas. And this is, in a way, an extension of a chapter we've considered earlier, chapter 18, which was called Cutting the Root of Samsara. This chapter 2 is all about awareness. I think probably you all know what kleshas are about, but there's a glossary at the end of our book. And in the glossary, kleshas are defined as defilements, conflicting emotions, the poisons. So, cutting thoughts and short-circuiting the kleshas. Chogyam Trungpa introduces a couple of concepts in the beginning here, a couple of new terms. One is pagyo, a residue of mindfulness. Pagyo he defines as possessing residue. He says pagyo is a result of shamatha practice. It's translated as being heedful, as conscientiousness. And he talks about residues. He says residues are produced when what you experience on the spot is confirmed by your previous experience. So you can think of residue as having two parts, a memory and a past experience. So mindfulness means being there on the spot along with this residue. Pagyo is associated with decorum, with being aware of what is going on. So you could think of it as just that, pagyo, being aware. So that's the first concept. The second one is trenche, which is a combination of two things, recollection and knowing. And Chogyam Trungpa says, trenche is another result of shamatha practice. It's a combination of trempa, which is recollection, which is also translated as wakefulness, and sheishin, which is knowing. So all of these things are related to awareness. That's what the core of this chapter is. That's what the core of the whole book is. Trempa, it's the process of discovering in which you are touched precisely rather than being overwhelmed by emotions or excitement. So it's very much spot on, very precise. With trempa, you have some kind of memory or recollection. And then he talks about sheishin as being a check on these recollections. Sheishin means knowing as it is. That's a really important concept in Buddhism, just as it is. In a few minutes, we'll talk about just to be. That's what we're all about, on the spot. Sheishin means knowing as it is, the kind of knowledge that makes you feel at home in the world. It's what all these things, it's what awareness gives you. You take away the dreams, just be what is. So then he talks about how these two things relate. So Trempa is bigger, right? And Sheishin functions within the environment of Trempa. Trempa is the possibility of working with what is happening, and Sheishin is actually dealing with what is happening. The main point of Trempa and Sheishin, according to Chogyam Trungpa, is just to be, just to be. A sense of knowing or seeing always happens, he says. If you're willing to acknowledge its existence, there is the potential of being wakeful, open, and precisely there constantly. One can just be and at the same time act. So the combination of Trempa and Sheishin, of recollection and knowing, is called trenche, and that's his second concept here. Trenche is the kind of recollection that connects the past and the present together. Traditionally, trenche is considered a kind of warning, but Chogyam Trungpa suggests here that trenche does not simply mean being warned about something bad, but it is realizing that you should be on the dot, once more, precisely here, on the spot. He talks a little more about this. He says, Trenche is not concentrated awareness. It is more a general sense of awareness. With Trenche, you know it, you know, and what you have without being told, right? Because you've got that part from the past. You've got this thing in the present experience, and they're working together. You know what you know and what you have without being told. It is almost at the level of clairvoyance. Trenche allows you to be very sensitive and very precise. So we've got these two things then. Pagyo, which you could think of as being aware, and Trenche, which you could think of as just to be. So this brings us to the top of page 260, and this is where everything comes together. This is the heart of this chapter. So Chogyam Trungpa says, the result of Pagyo and Trenche is that you are able to use your awareness to overcome the 6 root kleshas. So I'll read that again. The result of Pagyo and Trenche is that you are able to use your awareness to overcome the 6 root kleshas. So one way to say that in plain English is, if you learn to pay attention, you can avoid trouble, right? If you pay attention, you can stay out of trouble. The 6 root kleshas. So often people talk about the 3 big ones, passion, aggression, and ignorance. And ignorance always needs to be defined here as meaning stupidity, because in Buddhism, they use the word ignorance to talk about many things. But here with the kleshas, it means stupidity. Sometimes people talk about 5 kleshas, and they include envy and pride. And Chogyam Trungpa here talks about 6. He includes greed. So we've got passion, aggression, and ignorance, envy and pride, and greed. So he says kleshas are connected with a naive desire to get what's best. And you need to put quotes around best. That's what's best in samsara, right? It's really a delusion. Kleshas are connected with a naive desire to get what's best without knowing how to get hold of it. And then he goes on to define these 6. Ignorance or stupidity is timuk in Tibetan. Here, ignorance means simply naivete or delusion, basic, ordinary, simpleton mentality, right? Like dumb as a box of rocks, that kind of stupidity. It is the thick fog that surrounds you while you're sitting there being cross-eyed. Ignorance. Aggression, shedang in Tibetan, which specifically means hatred, the intention to hurt someone. And this is considered the worst klesha in Buddhism. Hatred, aggression. And then passion, dochak in Tibetan, wanting to be glued to somebody or something. Dochak also means lust. And then pride or arrogance, nyagyal in Tibetan. Chogyam Trungpa defines it as my victory or I victory. It is like one-upmanship or me-upmanship. It's just ego, right? And then we get to jealousy, tragdak in Tibetan, tight shoulders. You feel so claustrophobic that you can't even extend your shoulders. You think other people are getting better treatment than you. And finally, avarice or greed, surna in Tibetan. You don't want to give anything away. You don't want to share anything. So here's the meat of the whole thing. Our whole samsaric existence, all our misery and all our problems can be summed up by these 6 defilements. However, the kleshas can be overcome. When the kleshas arise, you join your klesha with the practice of mindfulness and awareness. Awareness, right? Think back to chapter 18, cutting the root of samsara. You want to develop the skill to recognize the kleshas when they are just beginning to manifest, when they're still really small. and obliterate them while they are still small. That's your best shot. Chogyam Trungpa gives this example. He says it's like rubbing two sticks together to make a fire, burning them both up at once, the klesha and the awareness. In that way, you achieve Shinjam, what John was just talking about, thoroughly processed, another result of shamatha. Even better, he says, we can cut our thoughts and short circuit our kleshas. We can go beyond the kleshas and realize the possibility of egolessness. This is what it's all about. Such an inspiration can only come from the relaxation of having taken the refuge vow. And John, I'm sure, will speak to that in just a moment. When you take the refuge vow, you begin to find freedom. He finishes by saying, you realize that from now onward, there's only one journey. The journeyer and the journey become one single situation. So that's what I have to say on this, and I'll turn it back to you, John.
You're
Before we open it up to discussion, I want to point out one more thing about working with the kleshas. Now, there are several things, actually. The kleshas are different styles of neurosis, confused mind. And they have 3 levels of application. The first level is we're born into a particular realm. So all of us in this room are born as human beings. You're not born as an animal, like a cat or a dog that you might have in your house, much less as a denizen of one of the other realms, like a god or a jealous god or hell being, which we probably, very few of us have experience of. We haven't seen these realms in a physical sense, the way we see our own human realm or the realm of animals. The second level of interpretation of these realms has to do with an ongoing long-term state of mind. So you can have a neurosis that goes on for years, perhaps even a lifetime, that is characterized by one of these realms. As for instance, I remember you see this more in New York than anywhere, but now you see it in all the cities. People who are really living in the hell realm, walking down the street. I remember, seeing people who are just screaming, talking to themselves, who are just lost in insanity. They are in a hell realm state of mind, and that will go on for a long time, maybe their entire lives. Or someone who's born into wonderful circumstances, and they're in a God realm. They think that everything is just terrific, really wonderful. They've got all the money and love they need, and there's very little unhappiness in their lives, and they're living in a God realm. Or someone who's in the jealous God realm. I used to coach people on Wall Street. I was a coach, a life coach for many years, and I used to get clients who were Wall Street traders. And these people were living in the jealous God realm, I think now. They were envious of the people who had made millions and billions of dollars, and they wanted to get into that realm. It's like they wanted to storm the gates of heaven. That's the definition of a jealous God. So these mentalities, a human being, an animal, a hungry ghost, someone who's feeling utterly impoverished and jealous of other people, but especially feeling impoverished, that's a hungry ghost. These can go on for years, if not whole lifetimes sometimes. And the third way you experience the realms is moment by moment. You can have the mentality, let's say, of a human being. And the mentality of the human realm, by the way, is one of passion, appreciation of the phenomenal world. At its best, it's that appreciation of the Chateau Lafite 1965, or that wonderful steak, or that beautiful painting, or of making love with someone that you really love, this feeling of a tremendous appreciation in the human realm. You can be in a realm instantaneously. You walk down the street and maybe you're feeling depressed and you're in maybe the hell realm or the hungry ghost realm, and suddenly someone comes up to you and says something very complimentary, flattering, that they really have affection for you, and it boosts you. It makes you feel happy, and suddenly you're experiencing the God realm, the realm of pleasure and pride. Or quite the reverse. So you're walking down the street feeling normal, and somebody comes up and insults you, and suddenly you're filled with the anger of the hell realm. So these are the three levels. One is what you're born into. We're all human beings, as opposed to our dogs and cats who are animals. The second is your ongoing long-term mentality, what it might be, your sort of your style of neurosis that goes on for years, perhaps even a whole lifetime. And the third is your momentary, moment by moment emotional state. Now, the way to overcome these realms is through the practice of meditation. And the first way to do it, especially when you're dealing with the kleshas being you feel a moment of anger or a moment of poverty and depression. The first thing to do is to know that this emotion, the emotion of the klesha means defilement or mental defilement, and is that it's made up of two parts. One is the story that you're telling yourself. The second is the energy behind that story. So if it's full of hatred, you're saying that object of hatred, they're such a terrible person, it might be yourself, it might be someone else, and you're going on about their thoughts and about what's wrong with them. It might be what's wrong with my life. And you are telling this story about it. And then what's accompanying that is an emotion, an energy aspect. The first step in dealing with these through meditation is to cut the story, to see that you're telling yourself a story, and to cut it and just see the emotion. And once you do that, that emotion, sooner or later, if you cut the story, will evaporate. It will dissipate. It will dissolve into nowhere. And suddenly you're back in the present moment, clear, just like this, the way you're looking at this screen now. Simple, here, awake, with no agenda. So the first step in dealing with a klesha is to realize that you're telling yourself a story that's creating the emotion. That's the rationale for it, and cutting it, stopping. Stop telling yourself that story. And the second is to see the energy that story embodied. And when you see it, it begins to just lift and evaporate. So that's what I have to say about this. This is a very profound subject. And I think at this point, let's turn it over to discussion. This is a very rich subject, to say the least. Kleshas and how to deal with them. Fred.
And the antidotes for depression, I didn't see it there. Is it cheering up or is it something else?
First of all, it's what I described. And yes, it's cheering up. One should cheer up. But also this idea, whenever you're depressed, you're telling yourself a story about what's wrong with your life, with the situation. And that rouses that feeling of depression. First thing you do is see the story, cut it. You don't need it. Coming back just to things as they are now, which includes the energy of the depression, but it will dissipate. Absent the story, emotions, the energy of emotions goes away. It's the story that triggers those energies. If hatred, comes along, you're telling yourself a story about how terrible that other person is, and what they've done to you, how they have no right to, and whatever it may be. And that's what kindles that anger of hatred, is the story. Cut the story, and you begin to see things clearly, much more clearly. It's just a story. Yeah, Fred?
Yeah, so it seems like it's like a combination of them all, being disciplined, where you habituate your mind to just coming present, and it just doesn't seem to land anymore. Like I used to have a very strong depression habit. I would enjoy it, right? And then you just keep coming back, and it just doesn't stick anymore.
Yeah, you could say that these realms, these neuroses, are habits of mind, that go on and on until we cut them. Everybody can be aware right now, just to look at your screen. Look at me. I'm on your screen, and everybody else on the screen too. And you come back, and the awareness is so simple. You don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to make a comment. It's here for you, doing it for you, this awareness. It's a moot point, whether you're being aware or it's coming at you. And you just are here with it, without comment, clear, awake. We can do this continually throughout our lives, to come back to this clear, awake, simple awareness. This is the real meaning of meditation, is to come back to this. Over and over again. And then we'll get lost in dreams. Oh no, I don't understand this. I can't do this. Oh, I've got this problem. Oh, whatever the thought may be. And then remember, come back. Come back to what? This, whatever this happens to be. Walking down the street, sitting in your kitchen, looking at a computer screen, whatever it may be. You come back. And this is what cuts depression, as well as all the other kleshas. Philip, any comments?
Not particularly to that. I wanted to ask you this, though. Chogyam Trungpa ends this chapter by talking about the refuge vow. And if there are people here who have not taken that, you are planning a ceremony in the near future. Is that right?
Yes, I need to pick a date. We've got a few people, about a dozen, who either will be taking the vow for the first time or renewing their vow. You can do that if you've already taken the vow. You can renew it. When you renew it, you don't get a name. You get a name the first time you take the vow. You get your refuge name. And really, what refuge is all about is making a commitment, your own commitment, to just what we've been talking about here in this class, of coming back to awareness. This is the true Dharma. And that's what the refuge vow is about, is making a commitment in your own mind to that kind of sanity. Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you for the teachings, Philip and John. My question has to do with something that was brought up last night and then applying it to the teaching today. I think I'm confused. So there was an idea about being in difficult situations, and then somebody brought up the idea that we're not talking about self-care. And that seems like something that's really important. But one thought I had was hoping to have time for self-care and not having all of our time be in difficult situations. Isn't that kind of like saying that you hope to not have situations to practice cutting our thoughts? because it seems like in difficult situations, that's a lot to work with. So, shouldn't we be grateful to maybe have difficult situations rather than seeking to have like moments of self care?
I don't think I quite understand. Do you, Philip?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Sarah, the way that you pointed it out, but I've been thinking recently, and Meg brings these worries up a lot in my mind, that we need to spend time talking about the difference between psychological growth and spiritual growth. And some teachers really have thought about this long and hard, including Trala Rinpoche, who just before he died published a book called Integral Buddhism. And he worked on that with a Western teacher, a philosopher, who is also well versed in Buddhism, named Ken Wilber, who has a book with the same title, Integral Buddhism. And it's fascinating. And among other things, they go back to the teachers that you knew as a young man, John, and the problems they encountered when they came to the West because there was such imbalance between the students and the teachers. So you could have fully enlightened teachers who were, still very much hierarchical and patriarchal and almost militaristic. And it was really hard going for a lot of people on both sides. Um, so Buddhism is good, really good at spiritual growth, but they never pretend to address psychological growth. And a lot of the Western teachers will say, particularly those who have spent time in Tibet, that the Tibetans are very different people than Western people. We spoke about this a little bit last night. Tibetans apparently aren't traumatized from day one with concepts of original sin. They're just loved unequivocally. They're not full of guilt, the Tibetans. They're very different from the Westerners. Um, so, so Buddhism, I guess what I'm saying is Buddhism can be like a whole package for Tibetans, but it's not for Westerners. And we can't expect it to be. I don't know if that's what your question was about. I hear Meg asking this question a lot.
Well, I guess like last night, I was relating it to my life. I'm going through a lot of really difficult situations, and I have no time for self-care whatsoever. And I catch myself feeling sorry for myself, wishing things were different or otherwise. Um, but I, at the same time, am really grateful because I see all the kleshas and I see all the thoughts and how that creates a lot of pain and suffering for me. So then, listening to the teaching tonight, remembering to cut those thoughts and just sit with the emotions, like I feel like that could actually fast track me, or to be able to work through that rather than wishing things were different. Um, I see it as a big benefit actually that I'm experiencing this really difficult situation.
Well, hats off to you. You're using a tough time really, really effectively. It's so much better than just, saying, woe is me.
Well, I say that sometimes, but I notice
You're very, it's very encouraging to me to listen to you. I want to say something about the Tibetan people and what Philip said. Trungpa Rinpoche said of the Tibetans that they were a much more primitive society than Americans. Um, they were much more concerned, the bulk of Tibetans, with survival, tending their yaks, growing crops, feeding their children. And so they didn't have as much time as we to become neurotic the way we do. And in that regard, he felt that we, Americans, were better prepared or better situated, as it were, to understand and practice the Dharma because we had so much time and opportunity to get really neurotic. That's the way he put it. Whereas the Tibetans just didn't have that luxury. Most Tibetans, they were too engaged with the simple act of physical survival. Most of them, living in primitive conditions. So, and what he said was that in coming to the West and bringing Buddhism to the West, he felt that he was sort of walking into an environment ready for the Dharma, because we'd all had so much opportunity to get neurotic. Now, what that's saying is that those thoughts that we have that torment us, you see them, you let them go, and you come back to this. And I'm talking to myself, as well as to anybody here who's got because I know that a lot of my emotional suffering is as a result of me telling stories here. Barry, and then Fred.
Yeah, just one thing I would say about that. I mean, I know I certainly have a tendency, if I find myself engaged in a lot of difficult emotional stuff, and so I'll identify it, and I'll do what you're supposed to do. But sometimes I don't realize until afterwards how hard I am on myself. That if you're engaged in that, it's good to remember to be gentle. You know, to treat yourself like you would someone you really loved who was upset.
Mm. Fred.
Yeah, could relate to what Sarah's talking about, and I think she's talking about you're developing cheer, because what I found, when was it, this June, I was traveling and I had this migraine where if I went from like down here to up, it was like I was getting punched in the face. And I'm like, oh, now I have a chance to test my practice to see how I can manage my aggression. As the kids are screaming, my head is throbbing. Can I practice patience? Right? Can I take all the blame on there? And it's like, oh wow, that was, but it's a great obstacle. It really is. And to turn it into an appreciation of the situation, I totally relate to what you're saying, Sarah. And it's in those moments too, you get to practice and develop that softness to actually befriend yourself. You find out what it is. It's like, okay, how could I maybe lessen this a little bit? I don't have to suffer fully. Is there some medicine I can take? Could I take a hot compress, right? To be gentle with yourself instead of going on with your usual aggression as well.
Yeah, I would second that. It would seem really important to introduce a few heavy doses of self-care on top of the Buddhism at this time for you, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it can't just be part of the practice.
Lena, you have your hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to add, and I think it's part of being gentle with ourselves, because for me, it's like before we can actually cut the story, we have to, have that light-handed warning system is the way I'm understanding that expression to that we're in the story, we're in a story, and I think sometimes we get triggered psychologically with whatever our story could be, and we get triggered and we're in a fight or flight kind of response, and it takes a while before so you find yourself reacting, and it takes a while before you get to, oh my God, I'm in the story again. I'm in my story or my repetitive story, and then I could cut the story. And I think where the meditation practice is really important for me is to shorten the time between the reaction and, waking up to, oh my God, I went off, and I could bring myself back and cut the story. So to me, it almost feels like there's it takes it's not easy. It's not always easy to cut the story. You have to catch yourself. But I think with regular meditation practice, the reactions get lessened, in intensity and in duration, and maybe one day no reaction, right? So anyway, just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Well said. Well said. I think we all have stories that haunt us. Certainly I do. And that come to me in the middle of the night and upset me. And I'm listening to what I'm saying and other people are saying here, and I'm getting teaching about it. These stories, they just we repeat them over and over again. Oftentimes, they're the same story told again and again and again, because when they're told, they have this painful form of entertainment that keeps us very busy, active in the story. I'm talking about the suffering stories. Philip.
So I've shared this with you before, John. So I'm 30,000 mantras into the Vajrasattva practice. And part of it for me is seeing this line. Habitually, we hold on to the past and say, this is me. That is what we have to let go of. Let the past be the past. So I still hold on to my past 30,000 times later. Maybe by the time I hit 100,000, I will be able to let go of it. But that is the advice. We have to learn to let go of the past. Let the past be the past.
Yeah.
What's our other choice? Take it to our grave?
Well, I mean, I've got a situation where an event in the past is constantly being reenacted in the present with a person who's important to me. So, and basically, but the same advice that you just gave still holds. Let go of the story, the complaint that I've got.
But for you, it's not the past. For you, it's the present.
Well, it's so full of suffering.
Yeah.
It's that story. To let it go. Hard to do, but because we're so habituated, it's a habit. Because it's entertaining, painfully so.
So I can't help but think of Shantideva. Right now, you have a perfect boat, fully equipped, hard to find. Leave your homeland. Of all the people I've met, you've got the perfect boat.
Perfect boat?
Boat, right. That's one of the first verses in that book we're doing by Shantideva. Right now, you have a perfect boat, fully equipped, hard to find. Leave your homeland. I'm sorry, that's from 37 Ways to be a Bodhisattva. It's not from Shantideva. I confuse those two poems sometimes.
Fred again?
Yeah, and when you were just sharing right there, and something else that came up last night, we were discussing confession. And I think, there's some confusion with confession, especially in the West, that it's to be like shameful or wrong, but to realize it's like, I'm stuck in my habitual patterns, Buddha's, putting an offer out for help and asking for it. I remember like I was in this perpetual breakdown story with myself of failing things. And I reached out to you. I'm like, yeah, I'm not good at this material world stuff. I'm failing at samsara. I'm like, I think I got to take refuge in the Dharma. And it's a great decision. That other stuff just doesn't hook you anymore. And you start to appreciate, those failures. It's like, okay, it's just a story mostly. And then, it's also like you also appreciate where you are. It's like, without that experience of suffering, right? If everything's just pleasure all the time, right? Then we get stuck in the God realm. And that's what's great about the precious human birth. We could see the contrast and the volatility of all the realms within a relatively short period of time, versus when you're stuck in the hell realm. I can't even count how many aeons it is, and same in the God realm.
We have a few more minutes. Anybody else? Tanya, Paul? Oops. Good night, Tanya. I'm saying good night. Vicky? Paul?
I'd just like to add that this is hard work. Not everybody does it. And I just try to be kind to myself. I was going through a crisis a number of years ago when I met a therapist, Buddhist monk, and he gave me the book by Pema, When Things Fall Apart. And where she talks about Maitri, about being kind to yourself. We wouldn't treat, well, I try to speak in the single myself. I wouldn't treat others the way I treat myself. It's just amazing. It's so it just really have to that's the self-care, just be kind. And one other thing just to say, like just try to be an ordinary person, not extraordinary, just ordinary. It's more difficult to be ordinary than it is extraordinary. An ordinary human being. And the word bodhisattva, it's like, he's a high enlightened one. But he's got a very difficult job. It's very, very difficult.
Indeed. Thank you. Terrific comments. Yeah, being kind to oneself is so, so important. And oftentimes we're so hard on ourselves. Oftentimes we believe what other people say about us that's negative, and we buy into that and suffer for that. Other times we don't need other people, we can just do it ourselves. Sarah.
Well, since being a bodhisattva is so difficult, then is that maybe not being so kind to yourself or taking on such a difficult?
That's what's so hard about being a bodhisattva, is just start being kind to yourself. That's where it starts. That's what makes it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, it starts with getting to know yourself in meditation. And then there's a kind of radical acceptance there of being willing to really be present to everything that's going on up here and accept it.
Didn't some Buddhist teacher write a book called Radical Acceptance? Female teacher in the Theravada tradition, I think. Vicky, you have your hand up?
No, I was thinking there's a book called Radical Forgiveness, but I forget the author.
Oh. Okay.
There's a guy who writes about happiness for The Atlantic, and he points out that one of the most dependable ways to make yourself happy is to help another person.
Right. Where have we heard that before?
Arthur Brooks is his name.
Yeah. Oh, we're getting near the end. Anyone have anything else? Thanks, everybody. It was really great. Okay, let's do the closing chants. Sarah, would you lead us if I put them up on screen?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will close by reciting a prayer for peace, and then by dedicating the merit generated by our practice for the benefit of all sentient beings. By the blessings of enlightened and compassionate ones, by the power of my positive actions of 3 times, and my prayers of pure aspiration, may wars, conflicts, epidemics, and all other maladies dissolve in this world, and may the earth and all who live on this earth enjoy the abundance of well-being. May all learn to live lovingly with each other. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great east, may the lotus garden of the Rigden's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Philip.
Philip,
Thank you
thank
all.
you.
Thank you,
Thank
Sarah.
you. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Good
Thanks,
night.
Sarah.
All right.
Good night, everyone. Be well.